Happy morning, friends. Here's yours, Dr. Rajanta. Welcome to day 18 session. Today we are just going to see about Python tuple. What is tuple? Tuple in Python is similar to a list. Only the difference is that list is enclosed between square bracket. Tuple, it is between parentheses. And we cannot change the element of the tuple once it is assigned. That is immutable. Whereas we can change the element of the list, which is an mutable. So here it is the summary of the data types. A string is immutable, a list is mutable, and here tuple is immutable. Next, let me just see how to create Python tuple. A tuple is created by placing all the items, that is elements, inside the parenthesis, separated by comma. The parentheses are optional. However, it is good to practice to use them. A tuple can have any number of items and they may be different data types too. Or integer, or float, or list, or string, anything, etc. Let me just see with an example. And see here, dear friends, here I have just given you a diagram related how a tuple can have. The first example, let me just have the first one, an empty tuple where without the elements. And next, let me just declare a tuple, tuple 2, which have only the integers, that is 1, 2, 3. And next, the third tuple which has mixed data types, that is integer, a string, and a float. And see here to the last, the fourth tuple, the example which has a nested tuple, and that tuple has a string, a list, and one more tuple too. And see here, dear friends, here we are just going to execute this and got the exact answer. That is, the first one is empty tuple, the second one is an integer, the third one is with a mixed data types, and the fourth, it is with a tuple nested with a tuple. Next, let me just see with an example a parenthesis without a parenthesis. See here, dear friends, here we have declared a tuple, my underscore tuple, and with the elements 3, 4.6, dog. And see here, we didn't use the parenthesis. Actually, it is not mandatory, but using parenthesis, it a good practice. And this example without using parenthesis is also known as tuple packing. Okay, let me just have the output of this. And before that, a tuple unpacking is also possible, whereas when you just make using a, b, c, which equals to my tuple, and see here, this a, b, c, you can make an unpacking of each and every element that assigning to that of element given inside the parenthesis. See here, dear friends, when you just print this, that is my tuple, here it is within the parenthesis as 3, 4.6, dog, okay, where you are unpacking it by making a equalizing as a, b, c, and then you are printing print a, print b, and print c. So it is easily assigned the exact element in the tuple to this variable a, b, c. Okay, next we just see with an example. See here, this is exactly an example of mixed and having a nested list with an under tuple. Here, tuple 1, it just contains a, b, 1, 2, comma 3.14 and with a string. And tuple 2 has A, B, C and D, that is without parenthesis. And see here, dear friends, one more tuple, we just making a declaration that contains list and tuple. And see here, the elements are 1, 2, 3 and with a list of A, B, C and one more list, it is a tuple, okay, a tuple of Z and 26. And just we execute it as it is, nothing much more is a bit tricky here. Okay, so creating a tuple with one element is a bit tricky, where having one element within parenthesis is not enough. We must need a trailing comma to indicate that it is in fact a tuple. So without a comma, how we can just make use of it? Let me just see with an example, dear friends. Here it is. The tuple 1, it just has an element, only one element. Okay, so it is without the parenthesis and without the comma. So just we want to execute it, and if we want to know the type, what is the type of the element, we can just give type of T1. Next, see here, dear friends, we are having only one element 5 but with a comma. Okay, but with a comma, and here also we can just make use of the type to identify the data type of that element. Next one, the example, that is without comma, that means parenthesis is not important and comma is important. Now see here, dear friends, when you just provide the comma, what would be the data type? It is tuple. But when you just without a comma, it just provide only the integer. That is what the difference here. Okay. The first example, it is without parenthesis and without comma. Second example, with only comma. Third one, without comma with parenthesis. And the last one, it is with parenthesis and with a comma. Okay, let I just execute it and see here, dear friends, wherever we are just using with comma, the data type, that is the type which it just shows is tuple. And whether even though if it is with parenthesis or without parenthesis, the element, so here it is the importance of using comma. So if there is a comma, whether it is without parenthesis or with parenthesis, it is represented as tuple, and without comma, even though if it is a single element, it just gives its data types as integer. Okay, let me just see the next one, access tuple element. There are various ways in which we can access the element of a tuple. The first one, let me just see the indexing. We can use the index operator, that is the square bracket, to access an item in a tuple where the index starts from 0. So a tuple having 6 elements will have indices from 0 to 5, trying to access an index outside of the tuple index ranges 6, 7. In this example, will rise an index error. So the index must be an integer. So we can't use float or other data types. So if you just make use of it, this will result in type error. Let me just see it with an example, dear friends, how to access the tuple element with indexing. See here, dear friends. So this is my tuple is the variable name and of tuple, and PERMIT is the exact element of the tuple. And if we want to extract, or if we want to know what is the element in the indices by using the indices, my tuple of 0, it just shows the index of the element, the first element. And where comes, if you want to just know the fifth element, yeah, you have to provide it with within the square bracket where it just shows as the T. And even though you can just extract it by another way where without using the indexing as like last index, that is length of my tuple minus 1. Length of my tuple minus 1 would be the last index, because see, whenever you are just making the number of element by using the length and the indices, it just starts from 0, so that it seems as like tuple minus, that is length of my tuple minus 1 would just shows the last indexing. And to the same thing, see here, last element, how to extract that last element is my tuple of that my length of my tuple minus 1. And see here we are just making use of an function that we are extracting from the length of the tuple and then making it as an index value. We are extracting the element. Okay, and see here, dear friends, one more thing. If the index, if you are just giving out of range, it has to be as an rise and error, that index error. And next one, the indexes should be integer and it should not be a float or any other type. If it's so, it throws an error. So here it is. See here, the first example of tuple 0 is P. The second example, it just shows the tuple of 5. Yeah, it's T. And by using the length function, and we are extracting, or we want to know what is the last index, it is 5. And with the last index, we identified or we extracted the last element from the tuple. And next, see here, dear friends, we just got only one error, whereas my tuple has an index error. And even though here I have just provided one more error type of float, but as one error it is occurred, it throws an error and it just dropped it. Okay, fine. Fine. If you want to just know this, let me make use of fine. Let I just execute this. Yeah, see here, dear friends, the exact indexes should be, that is, must be integer and should not be a float. Okay. Okay, next we just see an example with an nested index. See here, dear friends, here we have just declared an n tuple, and with the elements, 3 elements. One is mouse, it is a string. Second one is a list, and third one is a tuple. And if I just want to access the list, I have to index it with 1. And if I just want to access the element of the list, I have to give multi-dimensional, that is multi-array dimensional, as like 1 of 0, 1 of 1, and 1 of 2 respectively. If I just want to access to the tuple elements, to the same, I have to just give, as tuple is having the index of 2. So now on accessing the element of the tuple, I have to give 2 of 0, 2 of 1, and 2 of 2. Okay, let us just execute both the examples where I have just given 2 of 0, that is 2 of 0 is accessing the tuple and the first element, that is 0. Okay, so first element of the tuple. And the next one is the example to extract the string value. Okay, and from string value I want to extract the indices of 3, whereas it seems to be the 4th character in the string. fourth character in the string. Anyhow, even though if you are just making that string, you can just specify it as a multi-dimensional array as like two nested index. Okay, so let us just execute it, dear friends. So kindly see here as what we have discussed, the resulted true. Okay, and next is an example with a for loop. As we have not yet discussed for loop, let I just switch over to the negative indexing. See here, dear friends, we have already seen examples in list related to this negative indexing. Yeah, when we just make the indexing backward, it is specified as negative indexing, or reverse, okay, it is specified or it is known as negative indexing. So negative indexing for accessing the tuple elements. So see here, my tuple is the variable and I am having the elements as P, E or MIT. And when I just specify the tuple, I just want to extract or access the tuple by negative indexing or reversing. So whereas reversing, it just starts from -1, -2, -3 and -4. So actual indexing, it just starts from 0, 1, 2, 3, whereas for negative indexing, it would be as a reverse or a backward starting from -1, -2, -3 and -4. So let us just execute it. Yeah, see here, dear friends, this -1 would be the last most element. And when coming to -6, yeah, as the indexes is having 6 element, when making on negative indexing, it would access the first element of the tuple. Okay, let me just have one more example with a basic return reverse tuple as like that. Okay, so see here, dear friends, so we are having a tuple T, whereas 3, 7, 4, 2 is the element, and when on extracting or accessing tuple of 2 is in the sense it is the third element, where we have already seen that index is starting from the 0, and if I just want to make use of the third element, I have to specify the T of 2. And here also you can just specify the range, whereas from the range you can just have more than an element. And see here, dear friends, T of 1 colon 3. 1 colon 3 is in the sense from